Robin Waite, welcome to today's episode of Focus on the Fun Stuff. I'm so excited for you to be here.
Well, I'm excited as well. I told you outside, I was like really humbled that you'd invite me on the show, so thank you.
No, honestly, do you know what, even, I don't know if you know this, but I feel like I messaged you on a Facebook Messenger platform last year and we kind of like missed each other, and then I was like, I really need to get Robin. I've watched your Ali Abdaal interview. Like, I really need to get Robin on this podcast today. So for anyone who doesn't know, Robin is a multiple author, speaker, business coach, multiple business owner. And I know that we're going to dive into your journey of how you've got to this point, and your passion now is coaching service businesses, freelancers, coaches, people that trade time for money And I'm also really here for this conversation today because I've had a business in an industry for a really long time that trades time for money. So, yeah, it would be really great to understand, Robin, your journey so far and how you've got to where you are today in Fearless.
Yeah, well, so I've been running businesses now for 20 plus years, 21 years actually this year, which I can't quite believe. Started out life as a data systems analyst working for a medical company, and did that for 3 years while studying. And it taught me a lot about how not to run a business, because the guy I worked for was loveliest bloke, brilliant when it came to product design, but just rubbish at running a business. And you know, a business doing 1.5 million that was losing money, it just baffled me. So I thought I could do a better job, naively, and then set up a marketing agency with a business partner. We ran that. It was a successful local agency. Probably we touched 250k revenue towards the end.
Yeah.
Had a small team of 4 people. And then life changed. Family came into the picture, met my lovely wife. Our first daughter was born. And, you know, life changed dramatically. I actually reached a point of burnout, which I know is something we're potentially going to touch on today as well, which ultimately led to me selling that agency in 2016. And it was bittersweet. I needed to do it at the time, but kind of it gave me a really good opportunity then when my second daughter, Soph, arrived to just spend 3 months it's the first kind of proper break I'd had from working all of that time. Yeah. Enjoyed that bit of paternity leave, then decided I need some adult conversations again. Went to some networking meetings, and I started telling my story about how I'd grown this agency and sold it, and everybody's like, oh, that's interesting, how did you do that? So they bribed me with coffee and cake, and there is honestly nothing that I won't do for coffee and cake.
Noted.
They picked my brains. I didn't charge for it at the time. It's just a bit of informal mentoring, and it transpires actually I was all right at it and loved doing it. You know, my clients were getting great results that I was working with through it. And that became the foundations for Fearless Business, which officially started in 2017, and haven't really looked back. I can't see myself doing any other career now. I absolutely love what I get to do.
Really? And so, sorry, I'm super interested then. So the coaching itself, I mean, I think when you've run a business for any length of time, everybody's got, as Daniel Priest would say, a mountain of value to stand on, experiences that they can bring. Did you transition into coaching with any other kind of like training or coaching training, or how did that transpire?
So, yeah, there's a little bit. So actually I worked with an organisation called Sherlaw's Coaching. They've changed quite dramatically.
Yes,
so,
I remember them.
Yeah, so Darren Sherlaw and Nick Rickson Nick Rickson was my mentor for a while. So it was a lot of kind of monkey see, monkey do. I sat in with a lot of sessions with Nick and just really enjoyed the way his style of kind of coaching and how he mentored the clients that he worked with. He took me under his wing. I did a few sort of, I suppose, courses with them. I don't actually officially have a coaching certification. I've taken a bit of an unstraight, zigzag line in order to kind of pick up my coaching skills through. I follow people like Rich Litvin, who wrote an amazing book called The Prosperous Coach. Any coach worth their salt should read that book. I literally have it on my desk, and it's my Bible. I refer to it daily.
Okay.
And I've done several trainings through Rich and his organisation, and then I pick off other coaches that I just like their style. I like their frameworks. I can see how it would fit with my business. And I think if you're good at what you do at the end of the day, and I'm not, I do practical, tactical business coaching. A little bit of mindset and that side of it because I'm curious and interested in it, and the work I've done through Rich, that's also helped on that side. But I'm not a certified therapist. I'm not qualified to work on sort of mind, body, spirit type stuff. So I don't deal with that. I work with associates who have the certificates and they can do that. So it was really important to me when I started that I wanted to set those boundaries around who I was going to work with, how I was going to help them, what I would help them with, and not overstep that mark, because let's face it, there's a lot of coaches out there who say they can do stuff, but actually they can't, and they're just stepping. It's because they're stepping too far outside what they're actually, where the level of experience is at. But yeah, I had 12 years experience of running a business and made pretty much every mistake you possibly can do, which I think gives me I earned my stripes in terms of being able to sort of help other business owners go through it, because I've been there.
Yeah, no, totally. So the burnout bit, and it would just be good to understand what you think led to that, because I know just prior to this we had a mini conversation, and we're going to talk about your model that you know and see that every business goes through every 3 years, which, like, when you were telling me about it, like, we need to talk about that. So I guess if you can just tell us through, like, briefly with the marketing agency, what led to it, do you think? Yeah,
so I won't give you that. There was lots of ups and downs, as there are in business, but towards the end, I mean, we were doing typical marketing agency essentially. So there was lots of late nights, and we had about 180 clients at the time, so lots of demands from clients, good and bad. I had 4 people working under me, possibly slightly dysfunctional because they were working under me. I'm great with businesses, but like, I'm not a people person, if that makes sense, or managing people.
Well, managing,
So, I mean, they were the best people, and just one day, it's, when you get like sleep debt and it creeps, it just builds and builds and builds. You lose 10 minutes here and half an hour there, and couple of interruptions in the night there, and then like after 12 months you wake up feeling awful because you're so burnt out. But it was like that for me, but it wasn't around sleep. It was just all of these demands and pressures that were coming on me. And my first daughter had been born about 18 months before I sort of had this breakdown. So you got the practical sleep side of things, the extra responsibilities of family, plus being responsible for a team, plus being responsible for 180 people. Totally. Very little time for me, because I had nobody there saying, hey, Rob, have you thought about a bit of self-care? And then one day I used to do a lot of cycling, so I was going down a categorized climb on my bike with my club. And I hit for the first time, and I think this was a reflection of, like, when you hit your limit, you sometimes do crazy things. And I hit 52.5 miles an hour on this push bike going down this hill.
Right. Yeah, it's like a road bike.
Down it, you sound like you know what you're talking about.
My boyfriend Joe was obsessed with cycling, so
so he knows that there's a formula for the number of bikes which you need. Do you know what that formula is? Where N is the number of bikes you got, the magic formula is N equals N plus 1. So you always need one more bike than you've got in the garage.
Okay, he's following that formula.
I could talk about cycling all day. Anyway, raz down this hill, and I hadn't reached the bottom, and obviously all the adrenaline kind of starts, everything starts happening in your body, and I just broke down, flooded tears. And my mates are like, I used to really struggle actually emotionally telling this story because it's so loaded. My mate's like, God, what's wrong? Are you okay? And I was like, clearly I'm not okay. I said, like, go back to the cafe, get me some coffee and cake lined up. There's a theme here. And I'll come and join you in a bit, but I just need a bit of space for 10 minutes.
Wow.
I ended up next to a railway line, not because I was going to necessarily do anything nefarious, but it was actually a quiet spot, which I've been to just to think, nice trees and fields and stuff like that. And then a train went razzing past, and I just had this crazy thought. I was like, well, if you're not going to do that because you're sensible, like, what are you going to do? Because clearly something's amiss. And I made a decision in that moment. I was going to shut the agency down. Really? I was just done with it. So I went back home. My wife is 8 months pregnant at this point, and I said, darling, I've got some news, good and bad. I said, she's okay, well, hit me with the good news first. And I was like, well, I've made a decision. And she said, oh, right, what's the bad news? And I said, I'm shutting the agency on Monday. So, of course, international sign of distress goes out, 8 months pregnant. Actually, it was the best decision I ever made. There's a couple of things I would have done differently with what I know now. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't have shut it down. I wouldn't have sold it. I'd have probably got one of my team to take on a management role and then just stepped away.
Okay.
Probably made slightly less money, but it would have been passive at that point. Yeah. And I could have then had that 3 months without pressure. But I didn't know that at the time. So literally on Monday I went in, told the team, said, made decision, 30 days time, you're all out of a job, sorry. They were brilliant. They couldn't have been better about the whole situation, because I think they'd seen what was happening behind the scenes.
The gradual build-up.
Yeah. And then the client side of things was slightly traumatic, just because I was so good at what I did with that agency. We delivered just a really good service to our clients, and we had clients who were there from like day 0 to year 12. So a few of them took it really badly when we said, when I said we were leaving, and word spread, and actually that's the point when somebody came to me and said, listen, I heard you're closing it down, have you considered selling it? Right. So that was a bit of a lifeline. It wasn't for much money, but it was enough just to, I did like an earn out over 24 months, so I was getting a couple of grand a month for 24 months. It's just no pressure. It's such a relief when that happens.
Yeah. Wow. So that's a really brave step, to do that. And So how long of a break did you have then until and that kind of like transition that you told us about, where you had the coffee and cake and you started telling other people, like what was that? How long was that period of time?
Yeah, it's probably about 3 months of not really doing a huge amount, and just I quietly behind the scenes I was kind of just rejigging my personal brands, organising my books, and just doing a few things like that. And then it was about 3 months where I was doing the informal mentoring, and then it was like, right, if I'm doing this, I'm going full gas on it. I'm ready now. Because I'd figured out at that point, it's like, I know what I want to do.
Yeah, and I can imagine that having that break also, because I think you forget how to think almost when you're fully in a business and you're in the burnout and it's so busy. Like you stop doing deep thinking or good thinking, don't you? Like, you don't come up with any new ideas anymore. And I'm guessing in that period of time, you were able to actually go, what do I know? What do I stand for? What can I help? What can I teach people?
Well, that's it. It's people don't realise the damage that like being on all the time in your business does to you. And like from a psychological standpoint, it might seem like your business isn't either that busy or it's like it's well organised, so therefore it's not creating stress. But just the mere fact that most small business owners are constantly thinking about their business, that creates that sort of stress hormone release that eventually leads to burnout. And mine probably, it has started happening a long time, probably even before that 18 months. But you get times when business is good, you get times when business is bad. So when the good times are there, stress goes away, and you kind of go through those cycles regularly. But because a lot of small business owners are constantly being dragged in so many different directions, they don't have time to just stop and think about why they're doing it, what are they doing it for, what do they want to get out of it. And even something as basic as like a business plan, right? You'd think that would be something which every business owner would do, because it's like, set a goal, that's your North Star, let's head for that. And every decision we make is like, heading in a certain direction. But since I've started coaching, I did like you mentioned Dan Priestley, I've got a Score app, and we've had thousands of people take that, business owners. And one of the questions is rate your business plan on a scale of 1 to 10. And 75% of people rate it 4 or below. So it's there, but it's substandard. Close to 26% rate it a 1 out of 10. So it doesn't exist.
Wow.
So you imagine you've got all these business owners who are blindly going about their business, and then they get to the end of the month scratching their head going, well, why am I so stressed and where's all the money? So I've made it like and I was there, I was one of those people, and I went through those cycles, and now I kind of made it my mission to help people avoid getting anywhere near that place, and to start to create a bit of time and space back for themselves. Oh,
I love that, because I think it's really, we need to start celebrating that success is, and that you can only run a successful business by having clear space, whether it's focus time scheduled in the diary, whether it's being able to take a week off and actually switch off. But I think the real celebration is I've got my business so that I can have some time to just go, what's next, or what's the right next move. Or whereas I think a lot of business like culture is celebrated as, well, we're constantly going, there's a new idea, and we are hardwired to keep having new ideas and try the new piece of tech or thing that's going to save us time or create a new business. But I just think it's really underrated. It needs to come to the fore more, that actually, and I mean now, gosh, there's so much distraction, so much to think about of AI coming and every, just to go, well, actually no, but I still need time without distraction just to understand where I bring my value, what I want to do.
Yeah. I call it guilt-free time off.
Oh, yeah.
And how what it looks like essentially, and this is where a lot of business owners kind of, so imagine you've got your default diary sat in front of you, okay, your planner for every week ad infinitum, I don't know, for the next year or something, and it's predictable, right? I know that every entrepreneur, this week's full, next week's full, in 2.5 weeks time or whatever, it's got about 40 to 60% of entries are full in there. You get 3 weeks out and it's about 20 to 40% full, and then 4 weeks out it's empty. So it's the same for every single business owner, entrepreneur out there. Again, it's a human psychological thing that we actually can't plan typically more than about 3 weeks out, because all of the different consequences of action and inaction and our thoughts like we just can't measure them, so we don't think that far ahead in terms of planning a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So, and when people do plan their diaries, what they tend to do, and you'll know this because you've worked closely with lots of business owners behind the scenes, it will be client fulfillment goes in first, typically, which takes up majority of the time. Then it will be peripheral stuff like admin, marketing, finance. So those fill up all of the blanks. And then what happens, the marketing starts to work. A client or a prospect phones up and wants a meeting, and then you're like, oh, our diary's full. How are we going to fit this in? So sales like meetings get booked in last, and which basically leaves no time for like that guilt-free time off. So I made a brave decision, it felt at the time, but I need to eat my own medicine now that I'm coaching and this is what I'm teaching people. And I started talking about default diary about 5 or 6 years ago, so just before lockdown. And I've got to a point now where I don't work Fridays typically. Or if I do work, it's out of choice. But there's no client coaching sessions in there. There's no sales calls. I rarely do a podcast interview. So like Fridays are mine because I know that weekends family time. I know that the other 4 days is client time, business focused time. Friday's my guilt-free time off when I can go and get my hair cut. I can go to the local spa and have a massage if I want to. I can just go and sit in somewhere quiet and write for a day if I want to.
Yeah.
But it took me like 3 years. Like imagine guilt-free time off is like a muscle. You have to exercise it. You have to practice and you have to build up the resilience because when you start, and it's called guilt-free time off for a reason because normally you take that time off yourself and then you feel you're racked with guilt because of all the other stuff you should be doing.
Yeah.
And how dare you go and have a spa treatment, when your wife's struggling with her job or whatever, or looking after the kids. So it's a muscle you've got to exercise. And as an example, I'm going to share with you later the story I shared just whilst we were offline. I'll give you a really good example of how I sort of did that, but on steroids at the start of this year.
Awesome. Okay, you got me. So we're going to do this at the end.
We're going to talk about it at the end. Yeah.
Okay, so I also guilt-free time off. That just is the perfect roundup for that. 'Cause even myself, like I know I'm on holiday next week, and I know that I will have to exercise that muscle to go, no, Emma, like you're not checking this, or is everything okay? Or it's still a thing that I have to get better at all of the time. So, so you're now into the coaching practice, and we talked beforehand about the model of the 4 phases that you see businesses go through. And I think this would be a really good place now to kind of dive into what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So every single business I've seen goes through the same cycle, and it's on repeat every 2 to 3 years. I've been through it 5 times myself personally. So 3 times during my agency days, obviously the breakdown being the pinnacle of that, the highlight of those 3 times, then twice actually in my coaching practice. Because despite the fact I'm the fearless business coach, I'm not immune to normal business stuff happening, right? And whatnot. But the 4 stages effectively are, stage 1 is consolidation. So we might have had a short period of growth or something like that and a lot of change within the business, but then we hit that very stable foundations where what it feels like is everything that you planned is working and you're like, yeah, good for me. I've done a really good job here and it's working as I planned. Your team are behaving, your profits and revenue are good.
Yeah.
There's not too many problems with clients. And you can sense that there's like a good wave of momentum behind you and things are going to plan. And most business owners will actually stay there for a good long period of time. That's the longest sort of phase out of the 4, which most people stay in. But after a while, a bit of the imposter starts to creep in because you're not really growing that much, but you're also not having too many downturns or problems. But so you start to think, when's it all going to go wrong? And then because of that, you get those yellow car limiting beliefs start to pop up because you're looking for things to go wrong. So therefore they start to happen more regularly and clients start to play up and then your profits take a hit. Maybe you've overspent or not, a client's left and you've lost a bit of revenue.
And just on that bit, when you're saying the things start to happen, is that because you're looking for them, you're doing less proactive things because you're living in a state of fear, or why does that bit happen?
So again, it's a stress response because people are trying to force momentum to happen because it's consolidation. So it's a nice straight line. It might be a slight upward tick, but after a while you get bored of that and you want it to grow faster. Yeah. So a lot of business owners, they start to really try and push to force momentum. And the best analogy I've got for this is I don't know, have you ever been surfing?
No.
So do you understand the concept of surfing is that So there's like several factors, things which have to come together in order for you to be able to catch a wave and surf successfully, right? So you have to have swells coming through. So the sea has to have a bit of energy happening in it, and then it has to hit the beach a certain angle. The wind has to be going a certain way in order for the waves to be sort of held up as they start to form and then break on the beach. You also have to catch the wave, like be in the right space out the back to be able to then paddle in at the right speed to be able to catch waves. So there's lots of variables going on. But this phase where you start to force momentum, imagine that actually there's no swells coming through. And there's no swells, there's no waves. And I see business owners who are frantically paddling around trying to catch a wave that just isn't there.
Makes sense.
You know, and I list off a load of stuff, and I'm not suggesting you don't necessarily do these things. My point from what I'm about to share is make sure you're just paying attention to what's working and what's not working. So inputs in, outputs out. So things like you'll see them amp up the amount of social media that they're doing. So, all right, this isn't working. It's time to say, I've got to do more of that. So they start doing more work, but it's not working. Or they'll switch on Facebook ads. They start spending loads of money, and then the quality of the leads isn't particularly good. So actually it didn't really impact or push the needle at all. So they start to do all these activities trying to force momentum to happen.
Like reactive, panicked activities.
And the rationale behind that is like, if you operate from a place of fear, blood rushes from your head, goes into your limbs and your heart so that you can run away from the thing or fight it or whatever. You can't think rationally. You can't make sound decisions during that time. So rather than trying to change everything and force that momentum up, I actually encourage business owners, that's the point where you need to be doing the opposite of that. You need to be slowing things down and doing less rather than more at that point.
Yeah.
But in that push to make things go up, all of a sudden you head into the fear zone. And like I said, I've been into the fear zone, which is the dip effectively. I've been there 5 times because inevitably things do just go wrong. It's like buses, clients, like it's not just like clients leave regularly every 3 months and then you get a new client in every month and it's linear. No, 3 clients will disappear all in the same week just because that's life and that's what happens. But it feels like you've hit this massive like dip in momentum and you've got all these problems and like you can't, because you tried all this stuff and it's not working, you're like really struggling and it's exhausting. And it affects not just your business but every aspect of your life. It like you just get dragged down into this dip. But what happens then, when your back's against the wall, it forces you to be creative and innovative, especially if you've slowed down and stopped. You get the time and space to find a creative way to solve those problems. Maybe create a new product. Maybe review your pricing structure. Maybe review the niche. You're actually targeting the right clients. Maybe to build a new marketing asset. Well, if those aren't working anymore, well, maybe we need something new and fresh to be able to put in front of our prospective clients. So you get super creative, and then after a while, you have a massive breakthrough, and whoosh, off you go. But you're back to consolidation, but further up. So my agency, we went dunk, 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 3 times, and we doubled our revenue each time we went through a breakthrough.
Okay.
So, which sounds like magnificent, but it was like, you remember my first year in business was like, I think me and my business partner took 16K. It's like, as I was 22 years old, I was like, yes, we're doing really well. I kind of do that in a week now sometimes. So, it's a bit crazy. So so it becomes predictable. First time it happens, and this is like me now reflecting on my journey, having done this. First time it happens, awful. Like, what's going on? Well, I've done this. I didn't want this to happen. Like, didn't plan for any of this. And it just feels as bad as it could be. Second time it happens, you're like, hang on a minute. This feels familiar. Still feels awful, but not quite so bad. Third time it happens, it's like, oh, here we go again. And what I've done now, the 2 times it's happened within my coaching practice, because I can predict it now when it's happening. Haven't quite nailed predicting it on behalf of clients yet, but
how are you able to predict it in your own business?
It's just gut instinct.
Really?
I'm just able to feel I've been doing and where the momentum's going in the business and the shift in energy and the dynamic of it all, dynamic of clients. So like take for example, my coaching business, I started off doing 1-to-1. My personal brand sort of took off, started to get lots more inquiries and leads, and so I had this pivot, which I ultimately ended up in me going into a group program or taking my coaching program into a group setting. But that bit in the middle, I was like, here we go again. This is like, I've got to, because this is like, I'm working so many hours. It's all good. I'm making good money, but I'm working all hours under the sun. I'm stressed. I'm coming home, not being the best dad to my kids and husband to my wife and everything else. So I could feel it. I know it's happening. And that's the point when what I do with both of the 2 times in my coaching practice, I go out and I break stuff. I purposefully force myself and my business into the dip.
What? Tell me more about that. Well, how do you mean? What kind of stuff are you breaking?
Because like nobody wants to spend time in the dip, right? And like the whole purpose of your podcast is it's got to be fun, right?
Yeah,
so business has to be fun. So I'm like, well, I used to really enjoy making Lego, right, when I was a kid. And the best part about it was when you made something amazing, like just beautiful with Lego, was taking it all apart, breaking it down, and then building something new up again. So that's my approach now. It's like when I can see that my business isn't optimal, it's not running and I'm heading into that dip, I'm like, right, screw everything, break everything up. Obviously, this happens behind the scenes, and I'm not having this massive tantrum in my office, like turning over desks and stuff. But it's just I switch stuff off, and then I find creative ways to then make it better. Is one way of putting it. So a good example of this, you mentioned the Ali Abdaal interview. Mm-hmm. So that went live in August 23. And which perfect timing, start of the summer holidays. Like when I don't work in August typically either. I do my group sessions, but no other commitments. So it goes live on August the 4th. And literally my inbox is just like blowing up. It's just going utterly ballistic. But the challenge was, I was like, I'm supposed to be off for summer. I'm getting all these people like booking calls in, and I couldn't fathom why a lot of them just weren't good quality, lovely people. But so far as clients for the business, just weren't good quality leads. It wasn't best fit. And it was absolutely doing me in. And again, I could see myself fast approaching burnout within about 3 weeks of this.
So were you taking the calls in August and booking them in?
Yeah, because I didn't know how to. I'd just done it the old way, was working fine, because I didn't have such large numbers of leads. So I had time to do a few calls a week. It was fine. So, and I got 3 weeks into this, and I'm like, this is crazy. And I've shipped like 600 or 700 physical copies of my book to like all 4 corners of the globe. Like literally, like had a production line with my kids and my wife and me. Like I was sticking labels and signing. I'm signing books. One's sticking labels. One's closing the envelopes up, and then off they go to Pauline. But I'm like, I can't take this anymore. Woe is me. I've got too many leads to handle.
Good problems to have,
So what I did is I was like, well, clearly the problem and the bottleneck is my booking. There's something wrong with my booking that's letting these people through. And I was trying to look at it and I couldn't. So I was like, switch it off. Just switch it off. And then an interesting thing happened. It forced me, rather than going down the AI automation route, which is like most people want to, the moment they want to automate everything at the moment. Again, something for another podcast. I was like, switch it off. And I will go back to old school. When a lead comes in, I'll start to pay attention to like what's happening there, who it's from, what they're asking for. How can I help serve them? Does my offer currently serve them? Do they actually need my help? Mm-hmm. Or is it just because they're a bit of a fanboy or girl on, see me on Ali podcast and wanted to reach out? And it was really interesting. It made me realise that, so I used to do it, so I had an application form first, and then if they passed the application process, then they would get my booking link. At some point, I'd allowed the 2 things to get smushed together. I think I switched like booking tools. And so the new one had a form builder thing, so I was like, I'll just move them together. But it meant that they could book a call and then fill out the application form. And I was like, there you go. So
isn't it crazy the amount of times we do that? The amount of times this year in my business we've gone, we should do this. And I've gone, we used to do that. How have we morphed into something else? And it's just, it's, I'm really scratching my head about it. Like, I guess people forget what works well. And I guess part of it is you're looking for the new thing, or you're kind of trying to innovate. And then a lot of the time we're just going, what we used to do was why it was way better.
And well, exactly. And so I don't know how long it had been like that, because it wasn't causing any problems. And I think small businesses, you can kind of chug along and have lots of problems in your business, and you don't really notice it. It's like a little 40-year-old Fiat Cinquecento with a rattly engine. It still gets you from A to B, and it's probably got loads of bits missing or, not working as it should, but it still kind of gets you there. So when I switched it back on, so I did an application form first. That got dropped into my inbox. I would review it and then send them the invitation link, and problem solved straight away. It's like half the calls, got my life back. And also it was really good fun, because I actually felt more involved in the process as well, of kind of the people I was kind of saying, actually, I don't think a call's appropriate, but let me send you a copy of the book. Go and watch this video. You should go and join this group because they're more into like startups or e-commerce or whatever. If it wasn't in my space, so I was still able to like serve them and give them tons of value. And it just became a heck of a lot more fun when I'd forced myself to go into that dip, creatively solved the problem by breaking things in the first place and starting to rebuild it. And then there was a lot of other good stuff which came out the back of that. So sort of close the loop on that bit. Eventually, and Dan's big on this because I was doing a lot of one-to-one selling. Since then, I've now, and it took a long time for it to work, but I've gone into like group sales calls. So I do a group coaching experience because that's what they're going to get in the program.
Oh, a group sales call. Wow.
Yeah. And then, so the applications come in. I still see whether they're a good fit. They get invited onto one of the workshops. So it's like a concierge, red rope policy.
Yeah.
We give them we have an absolute blast on the coaching sessions, and it's a proper coaching session where they get in the hot seat because that's what they're going to get.
How amazing.
And then at the end of it, I invite them to stick around to hear more about it, like the program, or if they don't want to get a sales pitch, they can disappear off, and some people do, and I don't mind so much because we all have free will. So that one little pivot point there has allowed me to make several innovations over the last couple of years on improving that whole of that front end customer journey. But it wouldn't have happened unless I got into that sort of stressed state of having to deal with that volume of inquiries. And straight away off the back of that, I mean, so for context, that interview with Ali generated 3,000 leads in 12 months.
Wow.
Right. So imagine having to deal with all of those on a one-by-one sort of bit. Like it would have been a lot of work.
Yeah, it's an influx.
But with the new structure, probably the old way, I'd have said I might have made 100k out of it. In the end, I did about 250k's worth of sales just off that one podcast interview through innovating. So my point is, like, going into the dip can be fun if you can predict it and see it, if you force it to happen, and then you have, like, I found it really fun fixing that problem, and seeing, like, the satisfaction of seeing it work on the flip side. Remember, going back into consolidation is that point where you've designed something to work in a certain way and then it works. And wow, I can't believe it works, but it works. Yeah. And that's the fun part, actually. So I break my business, I force the dip.
I don't feel like there's many people that I know that would say I actually willingly break my business. So I've got a question then just on that, because I think I can totally see now that it's easier might be the wrong word, but for you, if you can predict it and you know it's coming, and so it's not scary as much because you're like, well, I'm just going to make it happen. And so for business owners that are in the dip, and you're wearing a t-shirt now at the moment, which is fearless, which, like, business owners, yes, we're fearless because we've started something anyway. We've made something out of nothing. But definitely there are times when you're in this dip when it's like, wow, like I don't see the wood for the trees. It becomes all consuming. I guess, is there any practical coaching, like tips or things that you would suggest? When you're in the dip, how do you go, well, okay, well, I'm acknowledging I'm in the dip, which is, I'm sure, definitely a good first step to go, this is happening. But two, how do I stay in a good frame of mind to go, well, I'm here, but I'm going to work on it, and we're going to get out of it? Like, is there anything you kind of prescribe to your clients?
The first you've got to identify that you're in the dip, and that's not always easy, but a good friend of mine coined the phrase procrasti working. And you're really stressed, you've got a massive to-do list, but you just sit and stare at your computer for 3 hours and nothing happens. Yes, I do know that, yeah. That's normally a sign of that things are a little bit amiss. And the worst thing you can do is actually stay in that situation. Yeah. And the best possible thing you can do is really simple. If you've got dogs, go and walk them. If there's a spa nearby, go and have a massage or a treatment. Just go for a walk, go and have lunch, go and do anything but sit at your desk. And again, it's evidenced by the fact that, like, I have, like, ideas at the most annoying times, right? So 3 o'clock in the morning, or when I'm in the shower, and neither of them are convenient, right? And you have like a breakthrough idea and you're like, I've got to capture that, scratching around in the dark for like a notepad to write something, or, you know, or put it in your phone, or like in the shower and you're soaking wet and you can't like, can't document it. I suppose that's where Amazon is good, Alexa's good, isn't it? Because you'd be like, Alexa, take a note for me.
Yeah, not good if she speaks back in the middle of the night though, and your wife's like, what?
I probably realised if people are listening to this, I've probably just set off 100 Alexas around everybody's houses now. Charlotte my wife would get a bit annoyed if I was there talking to Alexa in the middle of the night. You just got to get yourself out of that environment that's creating the stress in the first place. Even for 10 minutes is just enough. I discovered I'm not big on, I find meditation really hard work. Like I've done things like flotation tanks and stuff, so sensory type stuff, and I don't know, possibly whether maybe I'm ADHD or something. I find it really hard to sit still.
No, I know other people.
I need to kind of be active. So for me, like walking or just doing something is like generally better for me to be able to think through stuff. But I did discover a really good sort of technique recently, which is it's actually a Buddhist form of meditation which they do, which is to go introspective, but rather than think about ideologies or thoughts, to think about parts of your body and be grateful for it. So being grateful for the fact that your brain is there and it's allowing you to have these crazy thoughts. Being grateful for the fact that you've got eyes that you're able to see the things around you. The fact that you've got a voice and you're able to do the amazing thing, like share the words which you want to share. Everything else, when you start to go through that process, and I would actually invite people with that, even that 20 seconds I did there, rewind this by 20 seconds and re-listen to that and go through that exercise, and you'll start to see that everything else just dissipates, it just disappears. And I've started kind of doing that now, and I can see the stress is coming. I'm just like, right, I need to switch off a bit, go into that sort of being grateful for everything, and then sounds a bit woo.
No, not at all.
And then what that does is it just calms down your kind of nervous system enough that you can kind of just take stock with the situation again and figure out what is the priority I need to be working on. And what goes alongside that then is trying to figure out what is that one thing. I know there's the book and there's that whole cliched thing around it. And are you familiar with the 4% rule?
I'm not sure. Actually.
So 4% rule came from Pareto's principle, 80-20, right? So finding the 20% of the things that contribute towards 80% of the output. Yeah. And if you look at any business, generally like 20% of the clients contribute towards 80% of the problems, 20% of the clients contribute towards 80% of the revenue or profit. And you follow it through, there's lots of patterns in the business. But what the art to Pareto is find the 20% of the 20%, the 4% of things that push the needle the most.
Okay, I've never heard that before.
So how I put this into practice, and this is what ultimately, really, I suppose, there was a few sliding doors moments where I was lucky that I had a mutual connection with Ali Abdaal, for example. But there was actually a lot more to it than that. So late 2022, I was doing all of the stuff that all of the gurus and experts tell you to do marketing-wise, because I didn't know any different, really. And again, marketing has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. I won't go into too much detail about that now, but I was doing all of this stuff, like spending literally like 30 plus hours a week on social, trying to like build my personal brand and do all the things they tell you to do. And I was like, it's not working. And I remember the 4% rule. I was like, all of this effort's like making, it's getting some impact, but not much, not enough. So again, this was the second time actually in my business where I broke it purposefully. We switched off social, not like switched off stuff, but we just stopped doing social. Right. And it gave me the space just to want to breathe and reflect on what was working, what wasn't working. And then I thought, what am I going to do instead? Because still got to do marketing. I still got to get clients, my business. And one question which floated around time and time again was like, how would I, if I had to get 1,000 leads by this time next week, what would I do? And I realized that in answering that, it wasn't any of that social media stuff, because that's like Noah's Ark, like one by one often, unless you have a viral hit and then you blow up or whatever, and then you get loads of inquiries. Like, what am I going to do? And I came up with this concept around partnerships and being like hyper intentional. And what I did is I didn't know why I was doing it fully at this point, but having looked back now, I've been able to break it down. But I made a list of like 10 people that I would just love to hang out with more. Okay. because they were just...
You didn't know these people necessarily at this point?
Not personally, not personally, but I knew of them. And so, and the criteria was they have to be really fun people, got a nice vibe, nice energy about them. They're doing something to make the world better, different, you know. They've got a really clear message, like, you know. And then the fifth one was kind of a little bit selfish, but they've got to have large numbers of my audience in their audience.
Yeah.
So on that list, and I don't mind naming a few of them. So Ali was on there, obviously. Dan Priestley's on there. There's a guy called Chris Do, runs a channel called The Future. So he sort of coaches creatives around pricing and stuff. So he's on there. Simon Squibb's on there. So I had this list of 10 people who are sort of in that influencer type of space. Great brands, great message, great vibe, basically. And then I was like, okay, this is all well and good, but how do I like get into their world? And I was like, well, you're not going to do that from your little studio in the Cotswolds, Rob, are you? Like, it's obvious. You need to get out and about and meet these people. So I started going to their events, and I showed up, took selfies with them. I congratulated them on their work. We had great conversations. And then I was like, this is good, but it's not enough. It's not quite getting me where I want to be doing. And then I was like, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're doing it selfishly to help lift yourself up rather than actually elevating their brand and being helpful. So I started showing up to these events and actually just, without their permission, just helping them. So like Ali, for example, he was doing a talk in front of 600 people at university, and everybody who was attending just looked lost in the auditorium, like waiting outside. So took my coat and my bag off, and I was like, right, loos are that way, cafes that way, you know, the auditorium's in there. Ali's doing book signings. I just started giving people directions. And Ali's general manager came up to me about half an hour into me doing this. He's like, Rob, what are you doing? And I was like, well, everybody just looks a bit lost, so I thought I'd just be helpful and just give them direction. He's like, okay, well, you don't have to do that because you're a guest as well. It's like, oh, okay, that's fine. I don't mind doing it. Carried on. He walked 3 steps away, turned around and then came back and he said, actually, we wanted to pick your brains. Ali's got a pricing question. Could you stick around afterwards, like 15 minutes, just so we can have a chat? I was like, let me think about this. Yeah, of course. So, and that was like a massive like moment for me. I was like, wow, God, I need to do more of that. So like Chris Do came and did an event in London, and like a lot of his content is like him doing, picks cool venues. He picks somebody out of the audience. They do a little bit of coaching work together on a whiteboard session. So all of his content's like filmed, and that's where he gets it from. So I went to this event, like, I look around, nobody's filming it. And I don't know why, but at some point I started taking I had a little radio mic set, which I take around with me, my little Rode Go wireless thing. So I got the mics, don't have a camera. We're in a room full of 200 creative people. I was like, so I just started going around. You've got a camera, have you got a camera, have you got a camera? And then lo and behold, somebody was a videographer, had a camera, didn't have the mics. So we rigged it up, we start filming, and Chris has been going like 15 minutes already. And partway through, Chris was like, what are you guys doing? And I was like, well, we're filming some content for you. I hope that's okay. And he's like, yeah, knock yourselves out. And I'm literally like falling over people, handing the mic around and stuff. Anyway, Chris, after about 2 hours into this thing, he points at me and he goes, hey guys, this is Robin. He's got a brilliant book. You should definitely go and like read it. It's called Take Your Shot. I've started reading it. It's amazing. Robin's a brilliant business coach. Like, you should hook up with him during the networking. And I was like, and again, it is like all I was doing was just being helpful.
Fantastic story. It's brilliant.
But most people, and this is where we don't create opportunities for ourselves, right? We're shrinking violets. We'll go to events and we'll sit in the back row.
Yes.
We won't go to the front row. And then, you know, how many times, right? And I used to be guilty of this. You go to an event, you get all like amped up, I'm going to go and say hello to them. And then you wouldn't do it. And then you feel like really like you let yourself down afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to like, they're either not going to remember, even if I do something dumb, like trip over and like stumble into them or something, or say something dumb, like they're not going to care. They've got busy lives as well, you know. So I just started doing that. I'd go to events, I'd sit in the front row, I'd be as helpful as I possibly could do. And lo and behold, these opportunities started to happen. So where the Ali Abdaal interview came from, for example, and I'm by the way, I can't emphasize, I don't think I've said this enough, like, I've been having so much fun since I pivoted and started doing this. Going to these just kick-ass events, meeting just the most incredible entrepreneurs. Like, I've got to hang out with some of the most amazing people as a result of just changing my mindset around what I wanted to get out of my life and my business. Like the Ali Abdaal, so what happened there was I started as his team grew. So he was just Ali, then it was Ali and Angus, and then gradually now they're like 33 people or something. But I got to work with a lot of Ali's team through those interactions because most of them are freelance, so I coached them. And then one day, one of the guys said, "Look, Robin, this has been so incredible. Like, I have to pay you." And I was like, "No, the agreement was it was fun. I did it for fun, helping Ali out. You know." He's like, "No, I have to give you something. Like, what can I do for you?" And I was like, well, there's this one thing. So like that timing the ask is like massively important in this because you can overstep. But I just said to him, "Look, I know Ali's recording 2 seasons before he goes traveling of his podcast, and there's 12 episodes a season. He was literally doing it back to back. So like, 24 guests over 2.5 weeks or something." So I said, "Look, make me super sub. I'm not going to I don't want to be pretentious and ask to go on the podcast because I don't know if I'm ready. You'll have to decide that. But make me a super sub so that if, any of these 24 people are traveling in from all around the world, if they don't show up, I'll jet down to London and I'll record." "Cool, yeah, let me speak to Amber." I was like, "Who's Amber?" And he's like, "Well, it's my girlfriend, but she's Ali's podcast booker."
Right.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
What are the chances? I didn't know that beforehand. So... And that night I get a call from Amber. "Oh, Rob, we've got a gap on Tuesday. Can you do it?" "Well, let me think about this." Hell yeah. That Tuesday when I went down to record, and it was in the June before it went live, I think I had 2 other online podcast interviews, a client session, and then school drop off and pick up. My wife was away working, had the dogs to walk, and I had to unpack all of the logistics of that. But I got the train down to London, we recorded it, and then the rest is history. But it all started from me consciously going, I just want to have I'm not finding this marketing that I'm doing fun.
Yeah.
It's a grind, and that's not what I set out to do. It's not what I teach people. So making that conscious decision to stop doing that and actually find something that was a bit more fun.
That story for me is just fantastic. Like, I think so many business owners you get stuck in your own way, you get stuck in the office. What am I doing next? Like that is just awesome. And like, hats off, because you're totally right. So many of us just sit at the back, don't put our hands up, don't ask the question, don't put ourselves forwards. And we only have a couple of minutes left, Robin, but I feel like it just segues really nicely into the story you just told me about when we were offline. Just that life is short, and if you could it would be a great way, I think, just to leave the listeners with what you've kind of experienced since the beginning of the year as well.
Yeah, so in August, just gone, I got diagnosed with a brain tumour. So I probably should have forewarned everybody that I was going to drop something. But so the good news is, though, that it's benign, it's slow growing. I've had several scans since, and it's I know that I'm safe at least for a good few years yet. But in that process, so when I got the news in August, and the only thing I can ever compare, I mean, there's probably plenty of people listening who've had health scares, but what my closest comparison was when my dad passed away 13 years ago. That's how I felt at the time. It's just horrible and scary, and you don't know what's going on. Went through all of those stages of like grieving with it and everything else, and then it got to sort of the autumn afterwards where I've kind of come to terms with it, and thankfully I've got a very good psychotherapist I work with as well. She's helped me out loads over the last few years, so if you're struggling yourself, always go and get some help as well. But I was like, there's a message, there's a lesson in this. I need to take something from this. And again, what I realised was that I'd actually been putting off a heck of a lot of things just because I believed that life was infinite. And I've been running business for 20 years, and things were going all right, and things could only really get better from that point. But Charlotte kept on saying to me, when the kids grow up, we'll go travelling, or when we retire, we'll go travelling. And my answer to her I kept hearing myself say it was, I might not have time for that. But I was like, well, if that's how I feel, what am I going to do about it? And so I don't know why, but it culminated in sort of November, December time when and over like 2 or 3, I kept on getting people saying, you should come to Dubai. There's loads going on here. There's events going on. I've got friends out there. I've got family friends out there, business colleagues. And so it just kept coming up. And I was like, and that was a great example. If I hadn't had that news in August, I would never have booked those flights. And I just thought, screw it. What harm is it going to do if I choose to do something for me? Because I've always wanted to travel. I've always wanted to speak in other countries. And I've always, I love entrepreneurship, and I want to see entrepreneurship in a different culture as well and things like that. So I booked the flights. Charlotte wasn't particularly happy about it, but I was like, no, this is for me. I need this. And I got out there, and I kid you not, I had the best time ever. And it just because it was like the whole week was dedicated. There was an event called the 1 Billion Followers Summit. Simon Squibb was out there, so I got to hang out with him. I got to meet his team and hang out with them. Chris Doe invited me to come and co-facilitate a workshop with him and another mutual friend of ours who hooked us up. And I don't know why, but one morning I had a bit of rush of blood to the head, and I thought, I remembered that Chris he'd organised a fishing trip, so I know he likes boats and fishing and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be really cool, and I mooted it to the guys that we might organise something on the Friday that I was out there for us to do a bit of just a social get together. So boats in Dubai. Have you ever been to Dubai?
Yeah.
Amazing. Boats in Dubai are it's like hailing an Uber.
Yeah.
You can book one in the morning and it's there 2 hours later, a couple of hours later. So I booked this boat, which might sound like a bit of a luxury. It was only £700, I think, for 3 hours at sunset. So I was like, well, I book it. Worst case, nobody else comes and I sit on a boat for 3 hours sailing around a palm, enjoying the sunset. That's fun. Turns out Chris was well up for it. So he comes, his 2 boys came as well. So they're 18 and 21, so grown up. A couple of his team came. We had a couple of other mutual connections. So 10 of us on this boat, all just chatting about business and branding and design, all sorts of fun stuff. And it dawned on me partway around. I was like, crikey, if I'd actually had to pay Chris for 3 hours of his time, so it would have been $20,000 or something, probably more, I don't know, for coaching. And I was like, he's on a boat, he can't even get off for 3 hours.
You're stuck.
So I just created this most amazing week for myself, and it was all based around I'm just going to have as much fun as I possibly can. Do speak to this most people intentionally that I want to get around and speak to. I was even able to introduce someone in Ali Abdaal's team to Simon Squibb's team. So there's this whole thing working behind the scenes now. Of not only am I in some of those circles, I'm actually influencing some of those circles, amazing. Which is that's a dream for me.
Yeah.
The coaching I absolutely love. I wouldn't forego that, but there's a lot of other stuff in the business that I would happily forego. But just now, this little world that I've got myself into is incredible.
Oh, that is the best story of just even what's just possible, isn't it? When you interact, when you get out there, when you put yourself forward. Honestly, Robin, that is the best lesson ever. I think of just getting out of your own way as well. Robin, we've come to the end of our time together. You have been absolutely fantastic. There is so much good stuff in that episode. If people want to connect with you or find you, or where is the best place?
So I've organised a gift for the listeners out there. So free signed copy of Take Your Shot, my book. Fab. And if do you want me to drop the address?
Yeah.
We'll add it in the show notes, I'm sure. But fearless.biz/TYS if you're listening. So TYS for Take Your Shot. And I'll sign it, send it out anywhere in the world. Postage is entirely optional. It's up to you. And I'm also trying to grow my YouTube channel at the moment. So I'd love for a few people just to jump onto YouTube and give it a little subscribe at the moment, just to help kind of boost some of those videos as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin. That was brilliant.
My pleasure.